Welcome back to MASpets. So in recent news, we have some rather unfortunate changes to our animal laws that will be put into place very soon here in the US. Or it might have happened already depending on when I get this video up. So many people who don't follow exotic pet related news may have heard of the Big Cat Public Safety Act for one reason and one reason only: Tiger King. Now, the reaction to this docuseries was significant and has undoubtedly played a huge role in the passage of the Big Cat Public Safety Act, which has managed, after around a decade of trying, to pass the Senate and is set to be signed into law by Joe Biden, who has already endorsed the bill. I think it's fair to say that most of the general public believes this is a good thing, because this bill, which has been dubbed the Tiger King bill and was sponsored by Representative Mike Quigley and Senator Richard Blumenthal, is largely perceived as a ban on so-called roadside zoos, like the zoo that Joe Exotic owned before he was convicted of hiring a hitman to kill animal rights activist Carole Baskin. So what does the bill actually enforce, and why is it a problem? So probably the biggest change to America's exotic pet laws is that so-called big cats, which are defined as leopards, jaguars, cheetahs, lions, tigers, and any hybrids of such, can no longer be kept as pets. This new law effectively invalidates some of my previous videos, such as the North Carolina law video that states tigers and lions can be kept as pets in that state. Now it is or will be illegal in all 50 states, with one exception. If you hold a Class C exhibitor's license or Class F registration, quote, in good standing, you are exempt from the ban. What does this mean? Well, for starters, if someone like Joe Exotic were to exist, they'd still be able to own and breed big cats. USDA license holders comprise the vast majority of so-called big cat owners. Yet there are news outlets literally suggesting that roadside zoos like those featured in Tiger King, whatever that means, are going to be shut down, which is utter nonsense. And even Mike Quigley has perpetuated this lie. However, as far as truly private owners who are unlicensed, the option to own big cats in our country is now gone. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand the inherent issues with allowing people to have animals like big cats. Unlike servals and other smaller exotics, big cats, possibly with the exception of 2 species, and I'll get to that in a minute, are inherently dangerous and can easily cause human fatalities. I get that. I've never been in support of just letting any person obtain a big cat, and animals like bears and elephants and great apes for that matter, without some regulations in place. I understand that most Americans do not approve of animals like these being pets and living in so-called backyards, even though some people have backyards that are plenty large enough. And well, America is a democracy, and what the majority decides is usually what is eventually enforced. In fact, there are bans on big cats in pretty much every state except 4 of them. So with that being said, what has occurred with the Big Cat Public Safety Act is very distressing, because what it essentially does is enforce the opinions of animal rights-minded people like Carole Baskin, PETA, and the other major players who are highly influential and well-funded. Because outside of their opinions, there really is no logic to this bill at all. The reason? When we look at the name of this law, we see the words Public Safety Act. We know first and foremost that the people behind this bill aren't doing this for public safety. You can hear it for yourselves. Representative Mike Quigley, the bill's sponsor, has made comments that big cats should not be kept in captivity, and we all know, of course, what Carole Baskin's stance is. She is a person who has amassed considerable wealth, and instead of using those resources to, help find her missing husband, she has been aggressively campaigning to end the captivity of all exotic cats entirely. She even had a 25-year plan detailed that would ultimately end with captive exotic cats dying out in a small number of approved facilities, hers included of course, and ending their breeding even in the elite, well-respected AZA zoos. This is absolutely no secret. So as the bill passed the Senate, we even have Blumenthal saying, "These beautiful but powerful predators deserve to live in the wild, not be kept in captivity for people's entertainment, even as cubs." Which is ridiculous, as this bill does not liberate cats from captivity or prevent licensed facilities from owning and trading them, thankfully. So this bill is an obvious attack on animal captivity, and the public safety misnomer is being used as a buzzword to make their goals more palatable. Because who's against the safety of the public? No one. Probably the absolute most egregious part of this bill is the inclusion of a ban on so-called cub petting operations. So no matter where you stand on this issue, there is one thing that is perfectly clear and cannot be refuted. Tiger cubs do not threaten the safety of the public. Now, I fully understand the issues as far as animal welfare that is involved with businesses that breed tigers solely to keep cubs available to make money. This is a crappy business model because tigers are not an animal that should be farmed, so to speak. Tigers are a very costly animal to properly maintain, and I don't think there are enough qualified homes to deal with an excessive number of them. I do not agree with businesses like Joe Exotic Zoo. However, imagine that you own a small zoo and you decide to add a tiger, so you purchase a tiger cub, and while that cub is still small, you put out the offer that for a fee, a select number of visitors can pet the cub to help raise money for your business. Well, now that's completely illegal, and only a privileged select few, as in rich donators, can have the opportunity to pet a tiger. In fact, no one can come into contact with a big cat cub, no matter how small, unless they work at the zoo, or, and this part is pretty frustrating, in some very specific scenarios that are deemed as contributing to conservation. So this is what is written on the bill, and what does it mean? It essentially allows zoos to let rich people who are donating thousands or even millions to the zoo to pet the cats. That's why this language exists. Only rich people get the opportunity to get up close to the cubs, while the rest of us have to stay behind the barrier. Does that sound fair at all? If big cat cubs are so problematic, why is this allowed? There are actually a small number of zoos that offer cub petting, and I'd say most of them only do so when the animals are available, which is not unethical. As far as the zoos that turned cub petting into their main business, I've always advocated that instead of some oppressive ban, we can raise awareness and tell people not to support those places, and focus legal efforts on the bad apples specifically, instead of punishing everyone. And guess what? That's already worked. The main businesses that offer cub petting are dying off. One was Dad City's Wild Things, which was a pretty poor zoo operation in Tampa, Florida that was recently closed. Of course, the troubled Joe Exotic is no longer an issue as he's in prison, and probably the last prolific cub producer, Doc Antle, is facing multiple legal battles right now, and it just doesn't look good for him. So we certainly don't need this new law in terms of the cub petting, and it is only going to hurt people who don't deserve to lose the ability to make some extra money by letting their big cat cubs play with a few visitors. And once again, how is this dangerous? Yes, you can get nipped by a big cat cub, just like any dog or cat, but for this activity to be placed under a public safety label is inconceivable. They've literally just turned their personal beliefs into a federal law. And then there are other parts of this bill, such as this arbitrary number of 15 feet that must be between visitors and big cats behind a sound barrier. So, as far as possessing cats, they list all animals most people consider to be big cats, including cheetahs and presumably clouded leopards, which are smaller cats that are not even leopards, but this will likely ignorantly be included under that designation. However, as far as the 15 feet rule, both the clouded leopard and the cheetah are noticeably absent from it. And why is this so? This is because members of the AZA who adamantly support the bill often use these somewhat less dangerous species as ambassador animals, especially cheetahs. You can even meet a cheetah up close at the Bronx Zoo, where they have a designated so-called animal ambassador building, which I will be talking about thoroughly in upcoming videos. So obviously, if cheetahs were included, they would have to stop this. So they get to make the rules on what people are allowed to do based on their own preferences. So if cheetahs and clouded leopards are not dangerous enough to be grouped with the other cats in the 15 feet barrier rule and can be walked around on leashes, why are they illegal for people to own under the guise of public safety? Cheetahs and clouded leopards are rare cats, but for people with means, these would be the best cats for private owners. And now, without a business, that opportunity to own one is gone because animal rights activists said so. As far as public safety, there are, on average, 0 to 1 people killed by big cats in this entire country. Now that includes every captive situation, from AZA zoos to pets to USDA owners, all of them. As far as injuries, that's harder to estimate because that's not recorded or anything, but let's make something very clear. If someone is going to be injured or killed by a big cat, 99% of the time, it's the person assuming the risk of encountering that animal. In fact, I believe somewhere around under 10 times has an uninvolved person been seriously injured or killed by a captive big cat in the last 30 or so years that I can find. There is no relevant threat from captive big cats in this country. No school children being attacked by pet mountain lions or any scenarios like that the activists like to start a moral panic over. Now there have been some crazy incidents involving chimps and bears, which I'll talk about in future videos, but big cats are surprisingly benign. So we never needed a federal ban on them. And let's face it, ownership of big cats was always highly uncommon. That's why these people are such easy targets. They have almost no support. And in the end, even the Zoological Association of America, an accrediting body that used to support private pet ownership, turned around and supported this bill for some reason. The bill's passage was pretty much inevitable. While I've mentioned that this ban doesn't really affect most pet owners that hold licenses, you can rest assured that this is going to be Baskin's next goal. Not to mention, they will more than likely try to add future species to the current bill to further enforce their personal beliefs on others with cats that have absolutely no business being banned. For what it's worth, I don't care where you stand on this issue. This is more about the dangerous precedent of influential people just forcing their opinions on others until legislators eventually cave. There is a huge difference between disagreeing with something morally, philosophically, or what have you, and turning those beliefs into law that forces others to comply. For instance, where do you stand on things like hunting, dog breeding, horse riding, eating meat? These are all issues some people object to, yet I hope we'd agree they shouldn't be banned federally. So why cub petting, and why pet ownership? It's clear that people do not understand this bill and just view it as an answer to address the crappy behavior of Tiger King's participants. There are better ways to accomplish this that are already underway.